I begin by thanking the government of Uzbekistan for a wonderful reception yesterday evening. I hope you all enjoyed your time at that. We have a very, very busy day ahead of us, so I will get straight on with how we want to take the business forward. The key issues are in front of you in terms of the agenda. A few things to note before we go into that. One, the daily report is available. If you have comments on that, if you could send that to the Secretariat, that would be good. If I could check if there are any reports from the working groups, and if I could ask especially the credentials group if there's any update on your work. Is anyone from the credentials group able to report? United Kingdom? Yeah, thank you. United Kingdom? I think there may be a slight problem with the microphones.
Thank you, Chair. The Credentials Committee, comprising Kenya, Saudi Arabia, Costa Rica and the UK, on behalf of their respective regions, met twice yesterday to assess the credentials submitted to the Secretariat so far. Of the 91 parties participating in the 14th Conference of Parties, 72 have submitted credentials, and the Credentials Committee have assessed 66 of these as satisfactory. 4 are awaiting clarification or original copies, and the remaining parties have not yet submitted their credentials. The committee would encourage those parties who have not submitted credentials to the Secretariat to do so as soon as possible. The Credentials Committee will provide further updates on the status of credentials as the COP progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom, for that, and thank you for your work. Could I ask if there are any reports from other working groups, please? If I can just briefly go through them from the Budget Working Group. If there's no update from there. We do seem to be having a problem with the electronic system, so if you do want to make an intervention, I think we have to go back to holding your plaque up, and we'll try and identify you in that way for the moment. Could I ask if there are any updates from the other working groups, from cross-cutting or aquatic, terrestrial or avian? Yes, aquatic.
Okay. Thank you. A very brief report. We met last night for about an hour and we discussed agenda item 27.1.1 bycatch. We've not completed our deliberations on that at this stage, but I'm hopeful that we can conclude something when we first meet at lunchtime today. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. And yes, from avian, please.
No, there is.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. The Avian Working Group got off to a flying start yesterday. We completed our review of two agenda items, the action plan for Christmas Island frigate bird and the action plan for great bustard in Asia. We also received no comments on concerted action reports or listing proposals. And the remainder of our items are open, and we'll be starting at lunchtime with illegal killing.
Thank you for that report. It's very good that you're underway. If there are no other reports from the working groups, then thank you for that. If I could hand over to Secretariat just to take us through how we'll handle documents for this session and for the week. So, Chris, please.
Thank you very much. First, to stick with the topic of our working groups, there is now a link on the website for the convention called Information Hub, and from there you can go to another link that describes which documents each working group will be working on. With respect to CRPs, I want to make a couple of points. First, there will be some CRPs that come back after, that will be posted to the website after discussion here in the COW. We will announce that those are available, and we will then, after they have been on the website in the 3 languages for at least one session, be able to discuss them and make decisions or recommendations on them. Other CRPs will be coming out of the working groups that haven't been introduced in the COW yet. We will announce that they are available on the website, but we will not be able to make decisions on those documents until the agenda item is discussed in the COW. So when those agenda items arise, we will discuss both the paper as presented to the parties, but also the CRP. Before each session here, the Secretariat will announce which CRPs have been posted in the 3 languages to the website. With respect, and then I just want to remind everyone that with respect to any of our documents, please send your comments to the website or email address cms.cop14@cms.int. And if we can get that posted on the screens again, that would be fantastic. But also remember, just because you have submitted your comments, that doesn't finish what needs to occur. You still need to raise make your comments and your statements when we meet as a session of the COW. And then lastly, we have had a couple of requests for additional water stations. I just want to let you know the Secretariat has requested those, and hopefully sometime today we will start to see more water around the halls. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat, for that. If there are no comments on that, we will move on to the substantive agenda. If we could move then to item 21, which will include 21.1 to 21.2 and 21.3, and it's document 21 Rev 1, document 21.1, 21.2 and 21.3. Conservation status of migratory species is a key issue for the Convention, as you know, and we're clarifying very well where we are globally in terms of status overall. So I'd like to ask the Secretariat to introduce this item, and then there'll be a short presentation by WCMC as well. So if we could ask Secretariat, Dagmar.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Good morning, distinguished delegates. Let me introduce agenda item 21. Under this agenda item, the Secretariat wishes to introduce the document on conservation status of migratory species. This document has been prepared by the Secretariat, and it contains in Annex A a proposed draft resolution on state of the world migratory species report, and in Annex 2, draft decision on conservation status of migratory species. We propose to consider this agenda item together with reports under agenda items 21.1, 21.2, and 21.3. Document 21.1 contains the report on state of the world migratory species. Document 21.2 contains the report assessment of the risk posed to CMS Appendix 1 listed species by direct use and trade. And document 21.3 contains an in-depth review of the conservation status of individual CMS listed species. The findings of these three reports will be presented by UNFWCMC. When preparing document 21, the Secretariat took into account comments made by the 6th meeting of the Sessional Committee of the Scientific Council on these reports. The document provides summary of the implementation of the relevant decisions that led to development of these three reports. In line with the recommendation by the Sessional Committee, it's proposed to repeat assessment along similar lines in the future. Given the complexity of the report, it's proposed to prepare such a report every 6 years to be considered at alternate meetings of the Conference of the Parties, starting at COP14. Further specifications of the report and the process to develop it are set out in the draft resolution and draft decisions that are contained in Annexes 1 and 2 of document 21. Therefore, in terms of the actions, the Conference of the Parties is recommended to adopt the draft resolution contained in Annex 1 of this document. Then adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 of this document, and further take note of the State of the World's Migratory Species report contained in document 21.1, take note of the assessment of the risks posed to the CMS Appendix 1 listed species by direct use and trade contained in document 21.2, and take note of the in-depth review on the conservation status of individual CMS listed species contained in document 21.3. And finally, it's proposed to delete the decisions 1317 to 1318 and 1324 till 1326. Let me now pass the floor, Mr. Chair, to Kelly from UNFWCMC to briefly introduce the three reports.
Thank you. I will present the key findings of document 21.1 through 21.3 in turn. Document 21.1 contains the State of the World's Migratory Species report. Launched yesterday, this report provides the first ever comprehensive global overview of the conservation status, population trends, and main threats facing migratory species. It also highlights the ongoing conservation efforts and identifies priority actions needed. Many CMS-listed species are in decline, driven by human activities, with the top two threats being overexploitation and habitat loss. Climate change and pollution are also key threats. The report found that half of the sites important for migratory species are not protected, and crucially, there are large gaps in the identification of key sites for many species. The report also identifies hundreds of species that would benefit from increased protection. These include 179 species on Appendix 2 that are high priorities for further conservation measures, as well as nearly 400 threatened migratory species, mainly fish and birds, not currently listed in the appendices. Overall, this report provides an important baseline to prioritize future actions. It highlights examples of tangible solutions that are already being implemented that need scaling up. More coordinated action is needed worldwide to tackle the most harmful and pervasive threats to these species. Turning to document 21.2, this provides an assessment of the risk posed to CMS Appendix 1 listed species by direct use in trade. Globally, evidence for direct use in trade was found for 88% of the 180 Appendix 1 species, either at the international or the domestic level. 53 species were identified to be at particularly high risk from overharvesting due to the threat from trade coupled with their extinction risk and biological vulnerability. This group includes species such as the cheetah, the saker falcon, and the spine-tailed devil ray. The report aligns with the key findings of the State of the World's Migratory Species Report and highlights the need for more action to tackle overexploitation. Finally, document 21.3 contains in-depth reviews of the conservation status of individual CMS-listed species. 10 case studies are presented for 5 Appendix 1 and 5 Appendix 2 species. These provide information on the conservation status, the key threats, and existing management actions under CMS. The Appendix 1 case studies focus on 5 species that have been assessed by IUCN as least concern globally. With the possible exception of the Mexican free-tailed bat, the current Appendix 1 listings appear to provide important ongoing protections for populations. The Appendix 2 case studies include 5 species that are critically endangered globally. The available information suggests an Appendix 1 listing could provide additional valuable protections for some species or populations, such as the forest elephant and waved albatross. These case studies provide useful insights which CMS parties may wish to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, WCMC, and congratulations on such a comprehensive piece of work. I think it's testament to the convention and to yourselves how well it's been received by scientists, by media and others around the world in the last few days, so thank you for that. Could I open the floor for comments? And again, if you could raise your flag. At the moment we are still having problems seeing the desks on the screen below us. So any comments on what you heard? Sorry, Dan. Peru, please.
Sí, muy buenos días.
Good morning, Chair. This is the first time Peru is taking the floor, and therefore we would like to thank the government of Uzbekistan for hosting the meeting and for creating this excellent, conducive environment for our work. And we look forward to discovering the rich culture and history of this country. Peru and Argentina wish to make a comment on document 21.2 on the risk posed to CMS Appendix 1 listed species by direct use and trade. In this section, there is more information on concerted actions and species who are at risk from direct trade. When it comes to the taxa included in Appendix 1 of the appendix, almost all transactions, around 99%, have been carried out. Unfortunately, we can no longer hear the speaker.
Se cortó. Bueno, y se considera.
It's considered that 80% of transactions cover 3 species, the vicuña, Nonyx rigatus, and Petruncatus ponticus. In another section of the document, it's highlighted that direct trade on Appendix 1 listed species has exceeded 5.1 million kilos. 96% of weight is Balaenoptera physalus, and the second most traded species is the vicuña, with around 3% in weight. That represents mostly hair. The trade in significant weight of other species has also been highlighted. we consider that this analysis should take into account differentiated use per species in terms of lethal and non-lethal use. In the case of non-lethal use, we should differentiate the extraction of a full species compared to specimen use. We also have to look at live animals. We have to look at categories of use, and we must look at the IPBES evaluations to carry this out. When it comes to vicuña, not killing the animal has enabled us to recover the population of this animal, and this has involved local communities as well. They use this species as a livelihood generator without killing the species. Therefore, we would question the inclusion of vicuña in this analysis because as we have included it, it gives less visibility to other species whose survival is threatened directly by trade. Thank you very much.
I think the microphones have gone in. Oh. Thank you. Thank you, Peru, and apologies for the technical problems that still seem to be with us. I think I've got Costa Rica next.
Muchas gracias, señor. Thank you very much, Chair. And as it's the first time Costa Rica is taking the floor, we'd like to thank the government of Uzbekistan for the opportunity to being here and being able to see the wonders of the culture of this country. Our countries, Panama, Costa Rica, Uruguay, the Dominican Republic, are fully in agreement with the comments that we have just heard from our colleagues in Peru on item 21.2, which was also requested by Argentina and Peru. Thank you.
Thank you, Costa Rica. Got Israel, please.
Thank you, Chair. I understand we're taking all three documents at once. Okay, well, we have comments. First of all, we'll go with the comments on document 21, Rev 1. Specific comments we have to do with the text in the draft resolution on page 8, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 begins with the words, decides to regularly review the conservation status of migratory species. And after the word species there, we would like to insert a short clause. I'll read it. Including the assessment of the risk posed to CMS Appendix 1 listed species by direct use and trade. And the rest of the sentence would be as in the draft resolution. And we have a comment also then on the draft decisions in that document in Annex 2 on page, I guess that's, well, I'm not sure which page number is 9. Directed to the parties 14.AA. The draft decision here is interesting in the sense that a lot of work was gone into analyzing the status of migratory species, and there's even that whole section on the high priority and very high priority species. So we would feel it's necessary to call on the parties in this decision to put forward listing proposals or to consider putting forward listing proposals for these species that were identified. So, I mean, I can give you some text, but I'll send it in. But that's the general idea, that there would be a paragraph B bis directed to the parties to consider putting forward listing proposals based on this in-depth review of the conservation status of the species. Turning now to document 21.2 on the assessment of risk posed to the species by direct use. I think there's a lot of really good information in here showing that there is use. But when we look at the analysis that was done on the CITES data, there must be some sort of problem with the methodology. And the only reason I say that is because there's only one case in here that lists Israel, so I know personally the situation. It speaks about export from the wild of Appendix 1 eagles and import from the wild. This was cases where we have a reintroduction program. It's purely scientific, and the report mentions that all reported trade may have been in potential contravention. And this is in the CITES permits. This is marked with a source code W and with a purpose code of S for scientific, or maybe R for reintroduction. I don't remember specifically. But there's no way that this would be in contravention. So if the one case that I'm personally familiar with is problematic, I don't know how the rest of the analysis can be viewed. So I think there might be potential issues here that in the methodology that should be looked at a little more closely. Having said that, I still think that there's issues here on this report that are very important to take forward, that there is potential problems here. We do have a review method now, a review mechanism in the treaty in Resolution 12.9 for looking into problems and potential. We don't call it compliance, we call it review. But once you have this analysis, then there has to be a specific decision directed to the Secretary to follow up with these cases and to actually follow up using the 12.9 review mechanism for possible, I don't want to call them compliance, but for possible problems with following the resolutions of the convention that are cited, that are come up with in this work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Israel, for that. And if you could send in the text, that would be helpful. I do like the link from this report to action. And if we can get some words, if we can get some words around that, that would be very helpful indeed. So thank you. I think I saw the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and its member states. And we acknowledge the high-quality work done by the CMS Secretariat and partners, including UNEP, WCMC, and IUCN, in relation to Agenda Item 21. We welcome the first ever State of the World's Migratory Species report. We recognize also the need for regular review of this information on the status of and the threats to migratory species, and also of the knowledge and implementation gaps to help informing ongoing and future actions by the CMS parties and the wider global community to conserve these species. The EU and the member states can therefore support a proposal for a regular review at alternate meetings of the parties, starting at COP14 and subject to availability of resources. But we do urge the CMS Secretariat to seek synergies with relevant IPPES assessments, most notably but not restricted to the planned assessment on spatial planning and ecological connectivity. So we have an amendment for the Annex 1 in that respect. And similarly, the EU and its member states also support the general idea of the development of an online CMS data dashboard, subject to availability of resources, provided also data interoperability with other relevant databases. And so again, we have an amendment for the Annex 1. And so we will submit these proposed amendments in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, EU, for that. If you could, that would be helpful. If there are no other comments that we can see, excuse me, Secretariat, do you want to reply to any of these issues at the moment?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you for all these comments. Indeed, this was the first version of the report, and we'll be learning for the future to improve methodology. So I'll be pleased now to take the comments and provide a meeting document for consideration by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dagmar. What we'll do then is, if you can send the comments in, we'll revise the document and bring it back to the COW in due course. So thank you all for your comments on that item, and thank you, Secretariat and WCMC, for your work. It really is an excellent example overall. Thank you. What we'll do at the moment is take note then of document 21.1, 21.2, 21.3, subject to the comments that we heard and to further discussion. Thank you. Let's move on then to the strategic and institutional matters, and item 14 is the strategic plan. Item 14.1 and document 14.1 is the implementation of the strategic plan for the Convention. This is obviously a key item for us to discuss and to deliberate on. I'm aware there has been considerable intercessional work undertaken on this as well, but we need to move forward and look at the coming triennium as a key point. I'd like to ask the Secretariat to introduce the item. So, Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates. Under the agenda item 14.1, the Secretariat wishes to introduce the document UNEP CMS COP14 document 14.1, implementation of the strategic plan for migratory species 2015 to 2023. This document was prepared by the Secretariat. The document contains one annex with the final progress report on the strategic plan for migratory species 2015 to 2023. Strategic plan for migratory species was adopted by the Conference of the Parties at its 11th meeting in 2014 and revised by COP12 in 2017. COP11 decided to keep the implementation of the strategic plan under review at its regular meetings. COP13 provided instructions and guidance on the assessment of the strategic plan through decisions 13.1 to 13.3. The annex to this document contains assessment of implementation of the strategic plan developed by UNEP WCMC based on these decisions, thanks to generous contributions of governments of Germany and Switzerland, and also earlier contribution of the government of Malta on an earlier analysis. Therefore, in terms of the actions, the Conference of the Parties is recommended to take note of the assessment of progress towards the achievement of the strategic plan targets contained in annex to this document and comment as appropriate. It is also proposed to delete decisions 13.1 to 13.3. Let me now, Mr. Chair, please ask UNEP WCMC to provide a brief summary of the findings of the progress report.
Thank you. The report in annex of document 14.1 summarizes progress towards each of the 16 targets of the CMS strategic plan for migratory species 2015 to 2023. It synthesizes information from multiple sources, including CMS parties' national reports to COP14, as well as updated and available information on priority indicators such as the Red List Index, disaggregated for CMS-listed species. Overall, positive progress was made by parties in areas such as awareness raising and improving governance arrangements. Many parties have also made progress in identifying critical sites for migratory species, although more work is needed to identify all key sites and ensure these sites are effectively protected. Despite ongoing efforts by parties, the conservation status of many migratory species continues to decline, highlighting the need to scale up actions to reduce the impact of direct pressures on migratory species and their habitats. These findings align well with the goals and targets specified in the proposed new strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, WCMC. If I could open the floor for comments on document 14.1. If there are no comments, then we're asked to note the assessment of progress, and then we will delete decisions 13.1 to 13.3 in the paper. If there are no comments, then can I thank WCMC again and the work that's been done on this work intersessionally. It's been very productive. If we can move on then to 14.2, which is the forward look into the new strategic plan for migratory species. And again, I recognise that there's a lot of preparation going into this in terms of intersessional work. But again, if I could ask the Secretariat to introduce 14.2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished delegates, under the agenda item 14.2, the Secretariat wishes to introduce document 14.2, New Strategic Plan for Migratory Species, which was prepared by the Secretariat. The discussion on the document will be taking place in the Institutional and Cross-Cutting Working Group. This document contains two annexes. Annex 1 contains draft resolution, and Annex 2 contains draft decisions. Annex 1 also contains, as additional information, the full text of the draft strategic plan 2024-2032, the theory of change of such plan, a description of this theory of change, and how the SPMS goals and targets work together to deliver its vision. In summary, the document reports on progress on implementing CMS COP decisions 13.4 to 13.5, options for a follow-up to the strategic plan for migratory species 2015-2023, and the decision of the 53rd meeting of the CMS Standing Committee, Outcome 2. This document presents a summary of the analysis carried out by the Secretariat to review the strategic approaches used by other multilateral environmental agreements and the elements of the previous SPMS that continue to be relevant in developing a new strategic plan. It also presents the results of the work carried out by the intersessional working group of the Standing Committee. Invitations to participate in this group were sent to all the Standing Committee representatives, CMS parties, and stakeholder organizations that were also invited to participate as observers. The final composition includes 5 Standing Committee members from 3 CMS regions, plus the Scientific Council Chair, as well as observers from 12 parties and 8 stakeholder organizations. Details on the consultations held prior to this draft are provided in the document. Therefore, in terms of the actions, the Conference of the Parties is recommended to adopt the draft resolution contained in Annex of this document, adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 of this document, and delete decisions 13.4 to 13.5. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. What I'll do is open the floor for comments now. We expect this to go to the Institutional and Cross-Cutting Working Group for further discussion there, but it's important that you have the opportunity in the committee to make any comments that you like at this stage. Cook Islands, please.
Thank you, Chair. As it is the first time for the Cook Islands in taking the floor, we congratulate you on your nomination and your leadership during this meeting, and congratulate the government of Uzbekistan and the city of Samarkand for the warm welcome and generous hospitality to this historical place, and express our sincere gratitude to the CMS Executive Secretary and staff for the preparations of the meeting documents. Cook Islands welcomes the document on the new strategic plan on migratory species, and we commend the Secretariat for broadcasting this very important piece of work. We support the 6 main elements of the strategic plan as the direction to protecting and conserving migratory species and their habitats. Chair, the Cook Islands notes traditional knowledge on migratory species are not reflected in this new migratory strategy. Traditional knowledge related on migratory species are important source of information to assist and better understand protection and conservation of migratory species, habitat, and ecosystems. The inclusion of traditional knowledge also makes that linkage to the recognition of indigenous people and local communities' expertise on migration. This inclusion will encourage them to take action to protect their migratory species. We have a suggested text to be included, which is taking into account traditional knowledge by indigenous people and local communities to be included in target 5.3 of the goal 5 of the strategy. We will submit the suggested text to the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cook Islands. I think your point is well made about local knowledge and traditional practice being included in conservation. Conservation on the ground is undoubtedly better when people own it, so thank you for that. We've got Bahrain and then the EU. Bahrain, please.
Thank you, Chair. Since the first time Bahrain takes the floor, Bahrain extends gratitude to the CMS Secretariat for this opportunity to address the esteemed gathering. We appreciate Uzbekistan's gracious hosting of this significant event. As new parties to the CMS, with our accession only in 2022, Bahrain supports the new strategic plan and commends the incorporation of key targets from the KMGBF. Thank you.
Thank you, Bahrain. EU, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and its member states. We welcome the proposed new strategic plan for migratory species, and we thank the Secretariat for coordinating its preparation. We acknowledge the importance of this strategic plan vision to 2032, the relevance of its 6 strategic goals for the periods 2024-2032, and the alignments of the strategic plan with relevant resolutions, including on climate change, renewable energy infrastructure, ecological connectivity, and conservation measures for CMS species. We also appreciate the linkages to wider global priorities, including the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and possibilities provided by the new BBNJ agreement to establish marine protected areas for migratory species in areas beyond national jurisdictions. The EU and its member states supports the proposed draft resolution on the adoption of this strategic plan. And we also support the draft decisions concerning its implementation and monitoring with some amendments. However, we would like to flag that there are some concerns regarding the development of indicators and the reform of the national reporting template. The new strategic plan foresees that for all CMS species, the conservation status will be the measure to evaluate actions, and which is actually in line with the convention text. But it's our concern that the assessment of conservation status for species is not straightforward, as the term conservation status has not an agreed definition. There is currently no universal method to assess the conservation status of species, as the assessment varies between taxonomic groups, habitats, and regions. As such, we currently do not see how reporting conservation status to the CMS would actually be possible. Also, reporting on the conservation status alone would not be sufficient to assess measures and actions. It is the change in conservation status that needs to be assessed, and it must be standardized. The changes is actually measurable if it's the change that's measured. As such, the IUCN Red List status is currently the only way of having this kind of comparative information. Therefore, we would like to suggest that the primary tool for assessing conservation status is the IUCN Red List status, which is also used for listing, and we would suggest to change the footnote to according to make that clear. The EU and its member states expressed their will to ensure the implementation of this new strategic plan in their territory and to support the implementation of relevant actions in other countries that are parties to the CMS. The EU and its member states are committed to cooperate with and within all relevant bodies, such as the regional fisheries management organizations and regional seas conventions, to reach the goals of the strategic plan. And we call on the CMS parties and the CMS Secretariat to strengthen cooperation with the CMS and within such bodies. So we have some minor amendments, and we have already submitted them to the Secretariat in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, European Union. Sorry, I've got a microphone problem still. Thank you for these comments, and if you do take them into the working group, that would be very helpful. I think the alignment on conservation status is a key issue across all the conservation movement, even beyond CMS, so thank you for that. We've now got a sequence of New Zealand, then the UK, then South Africa. So New Zealand, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of New Zealand. So thank you to the Secretariat for facilitating this work that has led to this new draft strategic plan. The analysis that was done intercessionally on strategic plan approaches of other MEAs was an important step in this process, as well as the mapping of the current drafts against the Global Biodiversity Framework. New Zealand represented Oceania on the intercessional working group, and we note that there's been a very robust and inclusive process to get to this point. The current draft has had extensive input from parties and observers throughout the process. New Zealand is supportive of the draft strategic plan and recommends its adoption. We support the suggestion by the Cook Islands made this morning. Knowledge from Indigenous peoples and local communities is a very important source of information, and we support an explicit reference to it in Target 5.3. Agree that that's the most appropriate place for that. And I've listened to the EU's comments as well on conservation status and note that. So in general, we think it's a very clear and concise strategic plan. It accurately reflects the most important components of the Convention in the first three goals and includes the necessary supporting components in the last three goals. It aligns well with the GBF and strategic plans of other MEAs. And we acknowledge that there are further steps, such as the development of indicators that will take place after COP14. We encourage this work to be kept as simple and user-friendly as possible and to be completed as soon as possible so that we have maximum time to work under the strategic plan. In our view, it's important that the national reporting template is updated to reflect the latest strategic plan in time for reporting prior to COP15. We support the decision in resolution, but suggest a small change to paragraph 7 of the resolution to make it clear that the Standing Committee is tasked with endorsement of proposed amendments in advance of COP15. That's proposed amendments of the national reporting format. At the moment, the text has it going to COP15 for endorsement, which implies that we would be reporting under the old system for the next COP. I've suggested a text suggestion and sent it to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand, for these comments, and if I can, thank you for your work in the intercessional period as well, which I do know has been really instrumental to getting us to where we are today, so thank you for that. Can we then move on to the United Kingdom and then South Africa? United Kingdom, please.
Thank you, Chair. CMS has an important implementing role for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and the proposed new strategic plan is helpful in specifying this role. All parties should reflect on the commendable goals and targets set out in the draft strategic plan and how we'll all contribute to achieving these. Some of the follow-up activities outlined in the draft resolution and decisions could be clarified further, including the process by which the strategic plan can and should be implemented across the work of the Convention and parties reporting, like mentioned by New Zealand. We also have some amendments to both the draft resolution and decisions to this effect, which we can provide to the Secretariat ahead of discussion in the cross-cutting working group. Thank you.
Thank you. United Kingdom, if you can supply the comments, that would be helpful. Got South Africa, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Noting that we are taking the floor for the first time, South Africa extends gratitude to the government of Uzbekistan and CMS Secretariat for hosting CMS COP14. We support the CMS strategic plan that contributes to the implementation of the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, consistent with the mandate of CMS and priorities, and recognizing that CMS is the lead international instrument in the conservation and sustainable use of migratory species over the entire range. We want to place emphasis that the full implementation of the new strategic plan require the provision of adequate, predictable, and easily accessible financial resources. It further requires cooperation and collaboration in building the necessary capacity and transfer of technologies to allow parties, especially developing countries, to fully implement the new strategic plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. I've got then the Maldives and then Brazil. Maldives, please.
Thank you, Chair. Since this is the first time the Maldives is taking the floor, we would like to thank the government and people of Uzbekistan. We also thank the Secretariat for the organization of this meeting and congratulate you on your nomination. Maldives welcomes the new strategic plan for migratory species as given in document 14.2. Maldives faces issues such as transboundary pollution that have negative impacts on migratory species to a large extent. As such, ghost gear and other forms of ocean pollution, as well as air pollution, are areas that need to be reflected in the document. Pollution such as these that do not originate in our country needs regional cooperation, and we would like this to be highlighted in the document. Therefore, we would like to have explicit reference to transboundary pollution in Target 3.3, and we would submit our specific comments to the Secretariat, and we look forward to the working group on cross-cutting issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Maldives. I think that's a key point in terms of cross-border collaboration and cooperation, so thank you for that. I've got Brazil and then Georgia, please. Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. We thank the Secretariat of the Convention for preparing document 14.2. With respect to the proposed strategic plan for migratory species 2024-2032, Brazil is pleased to see that the need of adequate means of implementation, whether knowledge, capacity building, or resources, has been included as one of the 6 goals set out to achieve the strategic plan. This is a fundamental provision in our viewpoint, given that the lack of appropriate means of implementation has been the main element that hinders the achievement of our objectives under existing multilateral environmental agreements, including this convention. Nevertheless, we note that Unlike the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the proposed strategic plan did not take into account the specific needs of developing countries related to capacity building, financial resources, technical and scientific cooperation, and technology transfer. To sum up, means of implementation. With that in mind, Brazil suggests a slight modification on language to target 4.3, with the addition of the following sentence to the original text. In view of the different contributions to global environmental degradation and taking into account the specific challenges faced by developing countries. We'll send our comments to the Secretary by email. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. If you could send them, that would be helpful. We'll take Georgia next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Would like to extend our compliments to the CMS Secretariat in the government of Uzbekistan for the great organization and hosting of the COP14. First of all, would like to thank the working group on the strategic plan on migratory species and the Secretariat for the hard work that has been undertaken during the intersessional period. We consider adoption of the strategy document as extremely important for improving implementation of the Convention goals. Adoption of the strategy document is essential, especially in terms of having a possibility to integrate the goals and targets of the SPMS into national MBSAPs. Such approach will strengthen the synergies among the multilateral environmental agreements, which is one of the goals of the SPMS as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Georgia, for these comments. I don't see any other comments from parties. I should repeat, I'm very happy to take comments on this from observer organisations as well, as indeed I am for any item going through the Committee of the Whole. So I'll normally take comments from parties first, but then if there are any comments that other observer organisations want to make, they can follow on from there. So with that, I don't see any other comments on this item. Secretariat, I think where we are is we'll take this into the working group. Do you need any further comments at this stage? You're happy? Yeah, okay. So, excuse me. Secretariat have reminded me if you could send any comments and text in now as soon as possible, then that will allow the working group to begin its considerations over lunchtime today. So comments as soon as possible, please. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to, and I should thank again the intersessional work and the working group that's taken place on this item. It's been really very productive to get us to where we are today. Let's move on then to item 15, which is the Scientific Council, and document 15.1, which is an evaluation of the results of the restructuring of the Scientific Council. You'll recall from discussions yesterday, I think one of the intentions is to develop the number of regional representatives on the Council. But I could ask Secretariat to introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates. Under the agenda item 15.1, the Secretariat wishes to introduce the document UNEP CMS COP14, document 15.1, evaluation of the results of the restructuring of the Scientific Council. This document was prepared by the Secretariat with the contribution by the Scientific Council. This document contains 3 annexes. Annex 1 contains proposed amendments to Resolution 12.4, Scientific Council, including to its annex containing the terms of reference for the CMS Scientific Council. Annex 2 then contains proposed amendments to rules of procedure of the CMS Scientific Council and its sessional committee. Annex 3 finally contains a draft decision on subject areas of COP-appointed councillors. The document summarizes the outcome of evaluation of the results of the restructuring of the Scientific Council and proposes next steps to implement the relevant recommendations of the 6th meeting of the Sessional Committee of the Scientific Council. The document contains draft amendments to Resolution 12.4 Scientific Council, the terms of reference for the Scientific Council and the rules of procedure of the CMS Scientific Council and its Sessional Committee, which reflect suggestions made by the Scientific Council. The document further includes a suggestion for clarification of the procedure for replacing the party-appointed and COP-appointed councillors if there is a need intersessionally. The Scientific Council affirmed the arrangement of the Sessional Committee and requested the Secretariat to explore the potential to increase the number of party-appointed councillors on the Sessional Committee from each region from 3 to 4, to ensure engagement of councillors from each region in the meetings of the Sessional Committee and also to facilitate continuity of the Sessional Committee members from each region. The document therefore also provides an analysis requested by the Sessional meeting of the Scientific Council of the financial implications of such potential increase in the number of the councillors. The Secretariat would like to propose that during this discussion of this agenda item, the Committee of the Whole considers the practical aspects of the possible increase of the number of councillors. The financial aspects will be considered by the Budget Working Group and reflected in the meeting document for the adoption by the plenary on the last meeting day. Therefore, in terms of the action, the Conference of the Parties is recommended to take note of the analysis of the financial implications of an increase in the number of party-appointed councillors per region from 3 to 4 as outlined in this document, and consider this matter together with document UNEP CMS COP14, document 13.2 on budget. Then the COP is recommended to adopt the draft amendments to Resolution 12.4 and the terms of reference for the CMS Scientific Council as contained in Annex 1 of the document. Then it is recommended to adopt the draft amendments to the rules of procedure of the CMS Scientific Council and its Sessional Committee as contained in Annex 2 of this document. And finally, it's recommended to adopt the draft decision as contained in Annex 3 of this document. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Scientific Council is the essential underpinning for the Convention, so it's important that we look to have it fit for purpose for the coming triennium. I do wonder if the Chair of the Scientific Council wants to make comments, so if I could come to Australia first, if I open the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time Australia is taking the floor, we would also like to express our appreciation to the Government of Uzbekistan for their warm hospitality and to the CMS Secretariat for their excellent organisation of this COP. As is evidenced by the significant proportion of the COP agenda that the Scientific Council has reviewed and provided comments on, the Sessional Committee is critical to support the effective functioning of the Convention. Australia is highly supportive of continuing the Sessional Committee and increasing the number of party-appointed regional representatives to 20, or 4 per region. This increase will not significantly increase the cost associated with meetings of the Sessional Committee and will likely enhance the progress of crucial work streams. We also support the concept of reviewing all working groups and task forces each triennium to ensure continuing relevance, progress, and efficient functioning. Greater use of virtual meetings intersessionally will also be key in assisting the Sessional Committee to continue to progressing priority topics. Australia has been honoured to be able to represent the region on the Sessional Committee and has endeavoured to fulfil our duties as Chair in an inclusive, transparent and effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. And again, if I can, thank you for your support and involvement in the Scientific Committee over the years, and especially in the last triennium. Are there any other comments on this paper? Who we got? European Union, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and its member states. We do consider it premature to enlarge the number of party-appointed councillors based on the very low number of responses from parties and also the important budgetary implications of this increase in the number of councillors. And we therefore propose to postpone this decision to COP15, so regarding resolution 12.4. We do support the proposed adjustment of the rules of procedure of the CMS Scientific Council and its sessional committee, as contained in the Annex 2, to provide a clear procedure in case an alternate member resigns or there are less than 3 alternates per region, or a COP-appointed councillor is no longer in the position to serve on the sessional committee during the intersessional period. We also support the adoption of the draft decision as contained in the Annex 3, as it reflects the agreement by COP13 to review the applicability of the COP-appointed councillor subject areas at COP15. And we would like to make some changes that make clear that the working group and the task forces should mainly convene virtually. Furthermore, we should keep in mind the scientific nature of the Scientific Council and be aware of not shifting too much to discussing policy and governance questions in the Scientific Council, but focus on the science. And we will provide some minor amendments to the Secretariat in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. Are there any other comments on this item at this point? I note there are differing views between parties in terms of whether to agree to the increase in councillors per region, and that, of course, is subject to the budget discussions as well. We've got United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We note the concerns expressed about the increased costs of the potential expansion of the size of the Scientific Council. However, it is clear that the amount of work expected of the Scientific Council is, as noted by the Chair in her report, continuing to grow. The benefits of increasing the membership enables the burden of the work to be shared across a greater number of people. And another benefit to this increase is that it allows the potential for the greater expertise base for the Council. The cost increase is modest, given the work we as a convention expect of the Scientific Council, and it's possible that the costs in the draft budget may not be required in full, depending on whether all 5 of the posts, 1 per UN region, need to be supported or will be fully funded by the parties themselves. And I think I would just add, in response to the European Union's comments about virtual meetings, yes, we can make better use of virtual meetings in the Scientific Council for webinars and so on and so forth, but I think it is important to recognise the benefits of face-to-face meetings for technical discussions as well as for policy discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I'll check if there are any other comments on this. Yes, New Zealand, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't prolong discussions because the delegate from the UK has made most of our suggestions. We agree with their statement. Just to reiterate a couple of points, as the sessional committee chair has stated, we do think an extra party appointed councillor from each region will help share the load, and the load is big for the sessional committee work. There's a lot on their plate and a lot of work that happens intersessionally, so an extra person from each region would help with that, and it would also bring a broader range of expertise to the table, which is always important. And on the issue of virtual meetings, coming from a place very far from Bonn, New Zealand, we do support virtual meetings where possible and where we can still achieve the same objectives, agreeing that sometimes it is very important that we are face to face. Thank you very much.
Thank you, New Zealand. I wonder if I could then make a suggestion on how we take this forward. I wonder if I could ask Australia, EU, UK and New Zealand to work together in the coming time to seek a way forward and work with the Chair of the Scientific Council and Secretariat perhaps as well to take this forward. If you could form a little contact group possibly over lunchtime and report back to the Committee of the Whole, that would be very productive. Is that a useful way forward? Thank you all very much indeed for that. We'll return to this paper later then in terms of the agenda. We'll try to come back to it immediately after lunchtime in terms of the other items. If you do have any changes to the text, then please submit them to the Secretariat as soon as possible. Thank you. Let's move on then to address item 15.2, which is the Scientific Council membership. Again, this is document 15.2 Rev 1, and it concerns party-appointed members of the Session Committee, and I'd ask the Secretariat again to introduce it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates. Under the agenda item 15.2, the Secretariat wishes to introduce the document Unit CMS COP14, document 15.2 Rev 1, Scientific Council membership. This document was prepared by the Secretariat. It contains 3 annexes. Annex 1 presents the comparative analysis of candidates for the COP-appointed councillors for the subject areas of aquatic mammals and of climate change. Annex 2 contains the full details of the nominations for the position of the COP-appointed councillor for the subject area of aquatic mammals, while Annex 3 contains the full details of the nominations for the position of the COP-appointed councillor for the subject area of climate change. Revision 1 of the document clarifies that the full nominations of candidates for the vacant COP-appointed councillor positions are presented in separate annexes for each vacant subject area. The COP-appointed councillors for aquatic mammals, Dr. Giuseppe Di Sciara, and for climate change, Professor Colin Galbraith, and also the councillor for terrestrial mammals, Dr. Rodrigo Medellin, have informed the Secretary that they are stepping down from their positions as COP-appointed councillors. Let me thank them very much for the work they have done for CMS. The COP should then appoint regional members of the the COP should also appoint regional members of the Sessional Committee of the Scientific Council. The Secretariat therefore compiled all nominations received for the subject areas of aquatic mammals and climate change, taking on board recommendations by the 6th meeting of the Sessional Committee of the Scientific Council. As 2 COP-appointed councillors share the responsibility for the subject area of terrestrial mammals, which counts as a single position, the Secretariat did not seek nominations for this subject area. The document further contains an overview of the regional members of the Sessional Committee of the Scientific Council and the triennium for which they were first appointed. The regions should provide their recommendations on continuation of new appointments of these regional members, and they alternate to the COP. Therefore, in terms of action, the COP is recommended to undertake the following. First, after consultation with regional groups, appoint the regional and alternate members of the Sessional Committee of the Scientific Council for the intersessional period between COP14 and 15, in accordance with Resolution 12.4. And secondly, after considering the nominations of candidates for the COP-appointed councillors as contained in Annexes 1, 2, and 3 of this document, and recommendations of the Scientific Council, appoint COP-appointed councillors for the subject areas of aquatic mammals and climate change. The regional groups are therefore invited to consider these nominations and forward their opinion to Bureau to prepare for the discussion on the appointment of the COP-appointed councillors and regional and alternate members of the Sessional Committee in the plenary meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretariat. Let's open the floor for comments. I believe some delegations are having trouble with the microphone from on the plenary. Could I just check you can hear clearly now? It seems very loud here, but it seems to die as it gets towards the back of the room. We'll carry on, and we may take a break to just check on all the technology in a few minutes. Can I then open the floor for comments in relation to the Scientific Council membership? Suggestion is that there's a degree of coordination in the regional meetings and that you advise Secretariat of the conclusions from these deliberations. That seem a sensible way forward? Thank you. Let's do that then. I think if you could add this to your regional coordination agendas and report back later when we resume this topic in the Committee of the Whole. Thank you very much. What I think I will do, we may take one more item, and then if the technology is still a little bit less than perfect, then we may take a break, see if we can resolve the microphone issues and the wider technology issues, and then resume. So let's move on now and take item 16, which is election of parties to the Standing Committee. And that's document 16. And again, if I could ask the Secretariat, Maria, I think Maria will introduce the item. So Secretariat, please.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 16, the Secretariat wishes to introduce document 16, election of parties to the Standing Committee. The document reminds that Resolution 9.15 establishes that the membership of the committee shall be renewed at every ordinary meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and that the term of office of regional members and alternates shall expire at the close of the ordinary meeting of the COP following the meeting at which they were originally elected. According to the resolution, this meeting shall elect the following regional members who will serve from the close of COP14 to the close of COP15. 3 parties from Africa, 3 parties from Europe, 2 parties from Asia, 2 parties from South and Central America and the Caribbean, and 1 party from Oceania, and 11 regional representatives as alternate members. Regional members may not serve more than 2 consecutive terms of office, while there is no limit for alternate members. Considering the current composition of the Standing Committee, only Georgia will not be eligible for a 3rd term, and Uzbekistan will automatically serve on the Standing Committee in the next triennium as host of COP14, together with Germany as the depositary. There is no member to fill the seat of COP15 host for now. We would like to remind you that parties in arrears will not be able to hold office in CMS bodies as per Resolution 13.2. Parties are encouraged to consult within their regional groups and communicate their nominations to the Bureau on Wednesday. The election of members will take place on Saturday during the final plenary. The members of the committee will elect its chair and vice chair from among themselves in a meeting immediately after the closing of the COP. In this meeting, a Finance and Budget Subcommittee will be established among the members of the Standing Committee, with 1 country representative from each of the CMS regions, and the subcommittee shall elect a chair from among its members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'll open the floor for any comments, but the very clear suggestion is that you add this to your regional coordination meetings agenda, and then we'll report back in due course and take decisions later in the week in plenary. Any comments at this stage? I don't see any flags being raised. Oh, one there. Yes, Israel, please.
Just a brief question about the European representatives in the Standing Committee. There are 2, traditionally there's EU parties and non-EU parties in the Europe region. Is there any specific division expected of the 3 members? How many are from EU and how many non-EU, or is this up to the region to decide?
Thank you, Israel. Secretariat, do you want to deal with that question? Very clear question. So apologies. I'll go to EU first and then I'll come back to Israel. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So the EU and its member states, we agreed that 2 of the seats could go to non-EU countries and 1 seat to EU countries. So that would be the arrangement that we are happy with.
Thank you, EU, for that. Secretariat, do you want to add to that? You're content? Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't see any other flags raised. What I suggest we do then, I think we're on reasonable time. I think we should take a break for 15 minutes if we can, and that will just allow us hopefully time to sort out the technology. So let's break for 15 minutes and we'll resume at 11:15. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
And then they wanted that automatically.
Anna? Somalia. Okay, Dimitri, you saw Somalia and seat 120.
No, from the taxi. Oh, no, check.
Yeah.
Somalia is what it is?
120. Sure.
Secretariat. Yeah, you can't get there. No idea. You can't get
As done. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Now, you're aware of the assessment process that they had before, right? Under Duarte.
Yeah, but that's
Perhaps you.
I thought he's used to cold. He's home with the.
No, we are from tropical even.
Share the mic.
61.
We were tempted to do so, but now too much time. It was good to do it.
But now they are suffering. They have so many young staff, and nobody is there to train them.
It was fresh, let's say. The t-shirts yesterday. Snappy.
Yes, we heard that the same people have the same She said whoever would like to live, he can live.
Hier, da ist ein View, Mike. Da ist die Anerkannung von Nummer. Yeah.
If we could resume in 1 minute, please. Welcome back.
Итак, добро пожаловать.
I think we have partly fixed the technology, which is electronically now we should be able to pick up the parties if you want to make an intervention, so we should ask you to press the relevant buttons. If you are an observer organisation, could you still please raise your flag if you want to make an intervention? And we have people around the room spotting when you raise your flag, and we'll pick up from there. So hopefully it will be completely fixed over lunchtime, but right now, parties, if you press the electronic button, we should be able to pick you up on the screen, and observers if you raise your flag. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 17, which is the CMS contribution to the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This is agenda item 17 and document 17. We heard yesterday about the good work and synergies between CMS and CBD and other initiatives, and of course CMS has a critical role in delivering the overall global biodiversity framework. I'd like to ask the Secretariat, Executive Secretary, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished delegates, under agenda item 17, the Secretariat wishes to introduce document 17 on CMS contribution to the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The document was prepared by the Secretariat. The document contains 3 annexes. Annex 1 contains a draft consolidated resolution that shows the original text of the 3 resolutions it merges. The first is Resolution 8.18, Rev. COP12, titled Integration of Migratory Species into National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plans, and into ongoing and future programs of work under the Convention on Biological Diversity. The second resolution is Resolution 10.18, Rev. COP12, Guidelines on the Integration of Migratory Species into NBSAPs and other outcomes from CBD COP10. And finally, Resolution 13.1, the Gandhi-Nagar Declaration on CMS and the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Annex 2 contains the clean version of the draft consolidated resolution, and Annex 3 contains new draft decisions for proposed consideration and adoption. In summary, the document reports on the CMS contribution to the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, including progress on the implementation of Resolution 13.1, the Gandhi-Nagar Declaration on CMS and the Post-2020 GBF, and Decision 13.8, Migratory Species in the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. CBD COP15 adopted the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and related decisions that underpin its implementation, reflecting many CMS priorities as set forth in the Gandhi-Nagar Declaration. And we heard today, or yesterday, from the acting Executive Secretary of the CBD that all of the GBF really is relevant to CMS. Our document outlines the activities carried out by CMS to engage in consultations leading to the development of the GBF and its monitoring framework, and the steps already being taken to contribute to its implementation, including recently engaging in the Bern 3 Conference on cooperation among the biodiversity-related conventions for the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The draft resolution and decisions address further CMS engagement in the CBD processes related to the GBF and other relevant streams of work. The decisions stress the importance of synergies and cooperation among conventions and organizations, urging alignment of CMS priorities in NBSAPs for the effective implementation of the framework. Further engagement includes continuing work of the CMS Family Working Group on the Global Biodiversity Framework. The former name of that group was called the Working Group on the the Working Group on the CMS Family Inputs to the Post-2020 GBF, and we propose a new name, the CMS Family Working Group on the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, Global Biodiversity Framework. In terms of actions, the Conference of the Parties is recommended to A, adopt the draft consolidated resolution contained in Annex 2, B, adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 3, and C, delete decisions 13.7 and 13.8. And before I finish the introduction, I just want to say what a tremendous collaborative process it was to work from the Secretariat with CMS parties, with CMS partners, and to have really a community around CMS during the GBF discussions. And it resulted in an incredible outcome. And the fact, for example, that ecological connectivity wasn't even a word being in the text when we started, and now it's talked about all over the world, and in so many discussions we've had here, is testament to the incredible work of this body. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretariat, and congratulations once again on the work, as you say, and I think community is a good word. Can I open the floor for comments? And I'm pleased to say the technology seems to be working, so I've got Switzerland, then the Cook Islands, then Brazil, and then the European Union. So Switzerland, please.
Since Switzerland is taking the floor for the first time, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the government of Uzbekistan for hosting our CMS COP14 in the historic city of Samarkand, and to the CMS Secretariat for the excellent organization of the conference. Switzerland welcomes very much DOC 17 on the CMS contribution to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We are convinced that our new GBF has a great potential to enhance collaboration, cooperation, and synergies between the Convention on Biological Diversity and its protocols, other biodiversity-related conventions, other relevant multilateral agreements, and international organizations and processes, in line with their respective mandates. Annex 2 of DOC 17 is creating a strong linkage between CMS and the KM-GBF. We suggest to strengthen this linkage even more by inserting after paragraph 1 3 new short paragraphs, which would read: 1 bis acknowledges that the achievement of the goals and targets of the KM-GBF would contribute to the implementation of the objectives of the CMS. 1 ter emphasizes that the implementation of the CMS would make a significant contribution to the achievement of GBF's vision, goals, and targets. And 1 quarter emphasizes the importance of developing a monitoring framework for the key KM-GBF that relies, inter alia, on established monitoring systems. Furthermore, we suggest to amend paragraph 2 of Annex 2, which now reads, recognizes the importance of synergies and cooperation among the various biodiversity-related agreements at all levels, with and thus welcomes the Bern process on cooperation and coordination among parties of biodiversity-related conventions, including the outcomes of the Bern 3 conference that was organized by UNEP in January 2024 in Bern, Switzerland. In the same rationale, we suggest to create also in the CMS resolution a solid mandate for the Bern process, as it was given by CBD, Ramsar, and the ITP GRFA. This can be done either here in Doc 17, or it can be done in Doc 18.1 on partnerships and synergies. If we decide to do it here in Doc 17, we suggest to insert a new paragraph 2 bis, which reads, invites the United Nations Environmental Programme to continue strengthening cooperation and collaboration among biodiversity-related conventions, contributing to effective and efficient implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework by facilitating the Bern process for cooperation among parties to the relevant biodiversity-related conventions. And in para 7 of Annex 2 of Doc 17, we suggest to replace invites the CMS Secretariat with requests the CMS Secretariat. The COP should request activities from the Secretariat, not invite to do something. COP is the decision-making body for the Secretariat. If needed, this paragraph should then go to the Annex 3 part of the decision. Let me come to the decision in Annex 3 of Doc 17. To reflect the amendments we suggest for the introductory part of the resolution, we also have to amend the part with the decisions, in our view, and based on agreed language from CBD COP Decision 15/13 para 14, ITP GRFA GB Resolution 13/2022 para 20, and Ramsar COP Resolution 14/26 para 47, we will submit the suggested amendments referring to the Bern process in writing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Switzerland. Again, if you could submit these comments as soon as possible, that would be very helpful. Cook Islands, please.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Cook Island welcomes the document on CMS contribution to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We commend the CMS Secretariat for its efforts to align and contribute to the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Cook Island is supportive of the collaborative work and actions taken between CMS and CBD, and encourages further collaboration and information sharing in relevant programs of work. This alignment and collaborative work is good for a small country such as the Cook Islands with limited technical and financial resources to effectively implement MEAs such as CMS, CBD, and others. We urge MEAs to continue its collaboration and work towards reporting alignments so that small countries with limited resources will be able to meet MEA reporting requirements. The Cook Islands is working through the review of its NBSAP, and it is timely that migratory species be reflected in this key national document, and we urge countries and organizations who is in a position to do so to provide resources and technical and technological capacity to support the implementation of NBSAPs. We urge parties who is able to do so to also look at the National Invasive Species Strategy and Action Plan as another tool to integrate for implementation the migratory species targets on invasive species. Chair, there is an editorial amendment in Annex 2, draft resolution on paragraph 4, where further noting if this could be corrected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cook Islands, for that intervention. Again, I take the point about invasive non-native species being an issue to address. So thank you again. If you could send comments. I've got Brazil, then the European Union, then the Philippines. So Brazil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor once again. And we thank the Secretariat for preparing document 17.2. We would like to emphasize once more Brazil's commitment to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and to the implementation of all multilateral agreements on this matter to which our country is a party, including this convention and the Convention on Biological Diversity and its Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Indeed, those who were present at the 15th Conference of the Parties to the CBD will certainly acknowledge the key role Brazil played in the negotiations and adoption of this historic instrument. We call furthermore your attention to the fact that the KM-GBF reflects a political balance achieved after an exhaustive negotiating process. Therefore, this instrument must be approached through a systematic and integrated perspective, either here in CMS or in any other multilateral environmental agreement, avoiding any possible revision of the commitments made or the disruption of the balance achieved in the CBD. We recall that the KM-GBF acknowledged the necessity of increasing finance mobilization to biodiversity, as well as the specific necessities of developing countries in this regard. We must take these provisions into account during this 14th meeting of the CMS Conference of the Parties. Finally, Brazil is of the opinion that any decision or resolution to be approved in this matter shall be consistent with language already adopted in the KM-GBF and its corresponding CBD decisions. We therefore suggest some modifications to the draft resolution on Annex 2 of this document as follows. On preambular paragraph 3, we would like to replace the expression under the various multilateral agreements as relevant for each country for under each of the biodiversity-related multilateral environmental agreements to which they are a party, and that's to be consistent with CBD decision 15/6. Also in the same paragraph, preambular paragraph 3, we would like to include this expression as appropriate after the word facilitate. In preambular paragraph 7, it does not seem to be correct for us the affirmation that the KM-GBF is to be achieved by 2030, given that its goals are to be fulfilled by 2050. We therefore suggest that that reference to the targets of the KM-GBF be included, so the text reads like that. Noting that the targets of the KM-GBF and the UN Sustainable Development Goals are both to be achieved by 2030, and so go on as the original text. In operative paragraph 4, we would prefer to use the verb encourage instead of urge, likewise the KM-GBF. In operative paragraph 6, we request that this paragraph is deleted, since it does not seem to be related to the substance of the decision in discussion. And we must not forget that there is a specific document and decision on synergies and partnerships, which is that document 18.1, where provisions like that can be included, if they are not already. We will send our comments to the Secretariat by mail. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil, for these comments through the document. And again, if you could send the comments as soon as possible, that would be helpful. Excuse me. If we could move on to European Union, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The European Union and its member states welcome and commend the engagement of the CMS Secretariat in the development of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We value very positively the steps already undertaken to contribute to the implementation of the GBF, including the preparation of a new strategic plan for migratory species that provides the linkages to the GBF, and also in engaging in the burn process, in initiating the development of a joint program of work with the CBD Secretariat and in producing guidance on maximizing the effectiveness of protected and conserved areas through application of ecological connectivity and landscape-scale conservation planning. The GBF and related CBD decisions will contribute to addressing the key threats and conservation needs of migratory species. Likewise, implementation of the CMS commitments will contribute to the implementations of many aspects of the GBF. The EU and its member states support the resolution and decisions to be adopted by the COP on the CMS engagement in the CBD processes, which aim to support the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal GBF in areas of relevance to the CMS, contribute also to the work of the CBD ATEC on indicators for the GBF, and to strengthen cooperation and develop a new joint work program with the CBD Secretariat. We have minor amendments that we will have already submitted in writing to the Secretariat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, European Union, for that. If we could then move to the Philippines, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Philippines strongly supports the adoption of this resolution in its draft decision. We congratulate the CMS Secretariat and the CMS Working Group who led the effective integration of the CMS objectives, in particular the concern on ecological connectivity to the GBF, including the approach for monitoring indicators related to the targets. At the ASEAN level, the Philippines collaborates closely with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity and other Southeast Asian nations in developing the ASEAN Biodiversity Plan. This aligns the Global Biodiversity Framework, the Strategic Plan for Migratory Species, and other multilateral environmental agreement strategies and regional frameworks to identify common priorities through concerted multi-sectoral efforts. We propose additional text in the draft decision Annex 3 of the resolution to address the need for parties to also take an active role in advocating the CMS-related targets under the GBF, not only in their NBSAPs, but also in other relevant national action plans and in bilateral and regional cooperation initiatives to which they are participating. We propose additional text to this effect in item draft decision 14.AA, which we will forward to the Secretariat. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Philippines, for that. Let's move on then, if we can, to Ireland, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Wildlife Conservation Society. Unfortunately, although I appreciate Ireland, we're not Ireland. It's the Wildlife Conservation Society. It's a bit of a technical issue. Thank you. I'll make a brief intervention, as I don't know if this is going to a working group or not. First, as this first time we're taking the floor, thank you as well to the government of Uzbekistan for all the tremendous work and hospitality in hosting this amazing COP. WCS strongly supports this document and the draft consolidated resolution and decisions, and we congratulate the CMS Secretariat and parties for their contributions to the final GBF adopted by parties to the CBD, to which, of course, all CMS parties are also party. We were pleased to be part of the CMS Family Working Group on the GBF negotiations, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate through the ongoing working group. We welcome the focus in the draft resolution on ecological connectivity, but we also urge parties to add reference to ecological integrity in the resolution and decision, which is clearly articulated in Goal A and Targets 1 and 2 of the GBF and is fundamental for the conservation of migratory species. We appreciate the text in the resolution that parties should be encouraged to include all aspects of their CMS implementation in their NBSAPs. But we also encourage parties to include those CMS and migratory species-related issues in their outreach and fundraising and resource mobilization efforts to bilateral, multilateral, and private donors as part of their GBF implementation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that and for your supportive words overall. Again, if there are text changes, if you could send them in, that would be helpful. Let me return to the parties then. I've got Argentina and then United Kingdom. Argentina, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the first time that our country is taking the floor, and therefore we would like to, first of all, thank the Republic of Uzbekistan for leading this initiative and for welcoming us so warmly. We also wish to commend the work undertaken by the Secretariat and you as chair of this meeting. As for the document under consideration, in the interest of time, Argentina wishes to support the comments made by the delegation of Brazil. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Argentina, for that. Let's move on to the United Kingdom, then Kenya, then South Africa, and I may close after that if there are no further comments on this. So, United Kingdom, please.
Thank you, Chair. And our thanks to the Secretariat as well for its hard work in actively engaging in the promotion of the conservation needs of migratory species in the global biodiversity framework. And we welcome this ambitious outcome which has been achieved. We support many of the comments we've heard already today, so we won't reiterate those points. But we did want to raise a few amendments that we think are needed to the two documents annexed. With regards to the draft resolution, we recognize that there is a need for a new operative paragraph repealing resolutions 8.18, 10.18, and 13.1. I don't know that we need to propose specific text for this. I think we can leave this to the Secretariat, but to be aware that that's still necessary here. We also noted that the request for parties to engage in the preparations for the Bern 3 conference in the draft decision text 14AA is no longer relevant, so we would propose a slight amendment there just to refocus on engaging in the implementation of its outcomes since it's already taken place. And similarly, we would propose changes to element C of 14.BB in the draft decision regarding engagement with the CBD ATEG on indicators, given that the work of this group is rapidly concluding, and we're happy to submit those amendments in writing.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I've then got Kenya, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, so if we could go to Kenya, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And Kenya speaking for the first time, we'll want to thank the government of Uzbekistan for the hospitality so far offered to the delegates and the Secretariat's organization of this conference of parties. Chair, this document highlights the contribution of CMS to the CBD COP14 Decision 15.5 on the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In line with this, as a country, we are in the process of revising our national framework 2019-2013 to align with the CBD Decision 15.5 through the development of national targets and indicators. Chair, Kenya is committed to ensure the synergy and cooperation between mayors through a coordinated approach by bringing together different ministries, departments, agencies, non-state actors, local communities in the implementation of biodiversity-related mayors. Kenya therefore supports the adoption of the draft resolutions contained in Annex of the present document. The draft decision contained in Annex 2 that requires CMS engagement in CBD process, including in the global biodiversity framework, and the draft decision contained in Annex 3 on CMS engagement in CBD processes, including the global biodiversity process. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. Let's move to South Africa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. South Africa commends and appreciates the efforts of the CMS Secretariat and family in actively engaging in the process of developing the Global Biodiversity Framework. South Africa also appreciates that issues raised by the CMS for inclusion in the GBF are relevant to holding and reversing the loss of biodiversity. South Africa, therefore, supports the new decisions and consolidation of the 3 resolutions on CMS collaboration with CBD and its processes into a single resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that. If we could move then to Zimbabwe, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for giving us the opportunity to comment on this very important document and very important discussion. We welcome the next steps that are outlined in paragraph 30 of this document, and also the draft decisions that are presented. But perhaps maybe under 14BB, we could consider having a more specific instruction or a task directed to Secretariat to explore feasibility of establishing a financing mechanism which is specific to implementation of the CMS strategic plan under GEF, because we feel this is where we have the missing link. We talk of synergies, Chair, and we talk of accelerating the implementation of the various measures that we need to halt biodiversity loss. But for us to address the issues that were presented to us here, and even presented through a very impressive piece of art yesterday, the species themselves are calling upon us parties to implement measures, and this requires resources. And Zimbabwe is of the considered view that perhaps being more specific in terms of the how-to, not just to imply and to invite CMS parties to respond to maybe a funding window under GEF8, we could be more deliberate and more specific to actually have a specific window just for CMS, so that we can address specific issues that we prioritized in the strategic plan. So perhaps that could be adding a new E, and the E, which is under 14BB, becomes an F for Secretariat to explore feasibility of establishing a new financing window under GEF. Thank you.
Thank you, Zimbabwe, for that. I'm sure the members of the budget group and of the strategic plan working group have taken note of your comments as well. So thank you for that. I have one final comment from the Born Free Foundation, and then we'll close the list. So Born Free Foundation, please.
So, Mr. Chair, this is not the Born Free Foundation.
This is. Thank you, Chair. First of all, Born Free would also like to thank the government and people of Uzbekistan for making us so welcome, not least at the wonderful reception last night, and to congratulate you on your chairmanship. We support the various suggestions of parties and observer the WCS, but we'd also just like to add that the CMS might extend the scope of its contributions to the GBF by adding in animal culture and social complexity, and that the CMS can also make an important contribution to the development and utilization of the indicators and monitoring framework for the GBF. If CMS sets up a family working group on the Kunming-Montreal GBF, the Born Free Foundation would be happy to serve on that. Could I also just add that I think CMS can influence the perception of this sustainable use by avoiding language that we wish to promote sustainable use, and instead use language that we wish to ensure that any use is sustainable. It's a subtle but important difference. Thank you.
Thank you for these comments. Again, if there are any textual changes, and if you could submit them. I don't see any other comments from there. I'll take one final comment if I can, and then I'm going to close the list because I'm conscious of our time.
This is CBD.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll take a comment, obviously, from CBD. CBD, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of course, the CBD Secretariat welcomes this item, this document, as well as the interventions made by parties. As I mentioned yesterday, and as the Executive Secretary has noted, all the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework are relevant to the CMS. Targets 4, 5, and 6 focus on species, conservation, and sustainable use. Others on protecting and restoring ecosystems, including their integrity and connectivity. But of equal importance are those targets addressing the underlying drivers of change related to production and consumption patterns, to biodiversity values and how they should be integrated in decision-making in the public and private sectors, to strengthening the means of implementation, including finance, and to engaging Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, and all sectors of society. And perhaps it's these targets that also complement the actions under CMS. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is indeed intended to be a broad framework. It was developed, as we've heard, with the active engagement of the CMS community and many others, which together, I believe, very much improved the framework and made it truly a whole of government, whole of society framework. We believe that the GBF does have the potential to enhance coherence among the activities undertaken under the biodiversity-related conventions and other multilateral environmental agreements, and thereby strengthen efforts to achieve the goals and targets of the framework, as well as the objectives of this convention and other agreements. And of course, an early opportunity to realize this coherence is in the updating of national biodiversity strategies and action plans currently underway. Thank you very much, and thank you for the support of this convention to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework.
Thank you very much, CBD, and we very much look forward to working with you in the years ahead. I think you summarised it very well. It's a very close and intimate working relationship, but nature needs that globally, and I think the steps that have been taken recently is really testament to your work and to the work of the Secretariat and of all of us here. So thank you very much indeed for that. I will close. I've got one final, and it is final comment, if I can, from IUCN, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. IUCN would like to join the others in calls on the CMS Secretariat and parties to continue their engagement with the processes of the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, to enhance energies and strengthen collaboration towards meeting their respective objectives, recognizing the role that the CMS and the roles of the Convention can play in supporting the implementation of the GBF. Therefore, IUCN encourages CMS parties and stakeholders to implement effectively the strategic plan, integrate their CMS obligations and the new strategic plan action into the national biodiversity strategies and action plans, the NBSAPs, for effective implementation at the national level, contributing to the general implementation of the GBF. We have some suggested text to the change of the draft decisions in the Annex 3 of the document 17 to paragraph 14BB. So we just add a sentence in after the headline indicators, as well as in disaggregating the current headline indicators and strengthening complementary indicators for better measuring progress. And we will submit the text suggestion to the chair. IUCN also stresses the importance of ensuring coherence with other MEAs, such as all the biodiversity-related conventions, as well as the law of the seas, as well as the newly adopted internationally legal binding agreement under the UNCLOS on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, the High Seas Biodiversity Treaty, and ongoing discussions at the International Seabed Authority. IUCN invites parties to consider the IUCN Global Species Action Plan that as a guide to support the implementation of the GBF, but also to integrate CMS work into NBSAPs and the actions to take to achieve the species conservation outcomes for all the GBF targets. And we have also a lot of guidance and guidelines, IUCN guideline, connectivity guidelines, and technical report on connectivity and linear transport infrastructure as useful resources to support the work towards the achievement of the proposed new strategic plan of the CMS, Goal 2 and Goal 3. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, IUCN, and again, thank you for your support in developing this working relationship. We do have two more interventions, so I'll go to Uganda and Cote d'Ivoire, and then hopefully close after that. Uganda, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Uganda is speaking for the first time on the floor. So we would like to join other parties in thanking the government of Uzbekistan for the warm welcome and hospitality extended to us. Uganda, Chair, is privileged to have attended the BAN 3 conference representing the African region, and the conference aimed at discussing and contributing to the efficient and effective implementation of the Canning Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Chair, we do support and attach significant value to the proposed harmonization of strategies and exploiting synergies during the implementation of the CMS work program and its envisaged contribution to attainment of the GBF targets and goals. As observed during the BAN 3 conference, there is need to strengthen institutional and policy frameworks, support capacity development, and enhance technology transfer at various levels, especially at national levels, as well as the regional levels, in order to attain the desired outcomes. Uganda, therefore, welcomes the proposed CMS decisions for adoption and implementation by parties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. And let's move to Cote d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.
as it is the first time that Côte d'Ivoire takes the floor, we would like to thank the government of Uzbekistan for their hospitality and for all the assistance that my delegation and I have received since we arrived in this beautiful city of Samarkand. We'd also like to thank the Secretariat of the CMS for the perfect organization of this meeting. We wanted to say that we support the comments made on the Global Biodiversity Framework, and we would invite the Secretariat of the CMS to take into account the specific nature of developing countries. In Côte d'Ivoire, we have made provisions to ensure that biodiversity is protected, and action is being undertaken currently. And this action has been communicated to the Secretariat at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all these interventions. I think this is clearly a very important work area for the convention. I do wonder, Secretariat, do you want to make any comment at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to thank all of the parties and other organizations that made interventions, and we'll look for your text changes. And in speaking to the chair, we think it won't need a working group, but we can prepare a document for the conference room paper. And I just also wanted to add a piece of information that I neglected to state, which is because the issue of NBSAPs and integrating CMS priorities for those who are CMS parties into those has come up a lot in this discussion. I've actually been personally trying to work to get some guidance out on the need to integrate the commitments of parties under the different MEAs into NBSAPs, and I actually reached out to my colleague, the Executive Secretary of CITES and others, and this was discussed at Bern 3, and there is some guidance that is, it's just a quick, but I hope helpful set of guidance that we're going to be sharing with UNEP and UNDP, who are part of the process of supporting the updating of NBSAP. So just to let you know, there's been some effort to provide some pragmatic help in that process. It will be, I think, released as guidance for NBSAPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat, for that. If I could encourage you all then to send any changes that you might suggest into Secretariat as soon as you can, and we'll then produce a CRP for our further consideration. Thank you. Let's move on then to item number 18, which is synergies and partnerships under 18.1. So document 18.1 itself, and again, if I could ask the Secretariat to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under agenda item 18, the Secretariat wishes to introduce document 18.1 on synergies and partnerships. The document contains two annexes. Annex 1 contains an updated version of Resolution 11.31, which aims to more holistically address both illegal and unsustainable taking. Annex 2 contains proposed draft decisions aimed at parties, the Scientific Council, intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations, and the Secretariat. The background of this document is that it reports on progress on implementation of Resolution 11.10, Rev COP14, Synergies and Partnerships, and Decision 13.9, NGO participation in CMS processes. It provides details and examples of CMS engagement with UN agencies, MEAs, NGOs, civil society, and other groups, highlighting the importance of engagement in relevant processes and cooperation with partners. It outlines activities undertaken to further strengthen collaboration and cooperation, including at the strategic level. The CMS Secretariat has made considerable efforts in engaging with other organizations and partners, and is appreciative of the positive collaboration with other biodiversity-related conventions, other UN entities, scientific organizations, NGOs, and other stakeholders and local communities to further the work of CMS. Dependent on the availability of resources, the Secretariat will continue to engage with these entities to advance CMS implementation. The Secretariat also proposes to continue work to explore ways to increase its engagement with other stakeholders, including Indigenous peoples, local communities, and youth groups, and to further the COP decision, COP14, on engagement and recognition of NGO partners that make a significant contribution to the work of CMS. The recommended actions, the Conference of the Parties is recommended A, to adopt the draft amendments to Resolution 11.10, Rev. COP13, contained in Annex 1. B, adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 2. And C, delete decisions 13.9 and 13.10. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Again, an important paper for the working practices of the Convention. If I could open the floor for any comments, please. Yes, I've got Australia and then the European Union, South Africa and Brazil. So Australia, please.
Thank you, Chair. Australia welcomes document 18.1 outlining potential avenues to enhance synergies and partnerships. We are particularly interested in exploring and proposing ways to increase the engagement of Indigenous peoples, youth groups and local communities. It is well understood that there are multiple types of value associated with migratory species, including cultural ecosystem services and traditional and Indigenous knowledge systems, alongside our Western science understandings. While this has been a topic discussed in a number of other international fora, such as the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, which has several COP resolutions and guidance documents for parties on the cultural value of wetlands, CMS is really yet to delve deeply into this area and currently does not provide an avenue for a proper focus of discourse on them in the Convention. This is something that Australia, as current chair of the CMS Scientific Council, would be pleased to facilitate discussion of during the next intersessional period, with the aim of bringing information and potentially a resolution to COP15 regarding the value of traditional and Indigenous knowledge systems and the role it can play in effective migratory species conservation. We would like to provide specific text amendments for both the resolution to strengthen recognition of Indigenous peoples and local communities, and new decisions to be directed to both the Secretariat and the Scientific Council. So of course, we'll provide these in writing, but just for the reference of people listening now, for the resolution, we would insert a reference to Indigenous peoples and local communities in preambular paragraph 3, and also have a new preambular paragraph acknowledging the important role played in the conservation of migratory species by Indigenous peoples and local communities, including through the application of traditional environmental knowledge and cultural customs that safeguard populations of wild animals, and desiring to cooperate with bodies including UNESCO and the Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity that bring expertise on these issues. There's also a few small editing points that we'll have on the resolution that don't change the substantive nature of it. And we would also like to include 2 new decisions, one directed to the Secretariat, encouraging them in collaboration with interested parties, UNESCO and other relevant intergovernmental and non-governmental organisations, and subject to the availability of external resources, undertake a concise review of the values policy principles and concrete opportunities that exist in relation to the tangible and intangible cultural values associated with migratory species and their conservation, and then request the Scientific Council, subject to the availability of resources, to assess the significance of multiple systems of knowledge and understanding, including traditional and Indigenous knowledge, for supporting effective migratory species conservation, and provide a report to COP15 with suggestions for ways in which CMS might facilitate inclusion of additional systems of knowledge and understanding for enhanced implementation of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia, and thank you for the offer to take forward work intersessionally. I think it's an important area for the Convention to address in the years to come, so thank you for that. If you could send the text in as soon as, that would be good. European Union, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and its member states. We appreciate the efforts made by the CMS Secretariat in engaging with other organizations and partners, and the positive collaboration with other biodiversity-related conventions, UN entities, NGOs and other stakeholders to promote the work of CMS. The EU and its member states encourage the Secretariat to continue its cooperation with all these organizations, but also to strengthen efforts to increase the engagement of indigenous peoples, youth groups, and also other communities in the CMS processes. And in this regard, we would like to highlight the youth participation in the CBD with the work of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network as an excellent example of how youth can provide valuable inputs into processes of an MEA. And also recently, the 77th meeting of the CITES Standing Committee has also recommended the establishment of a CITES Global Youth Network. The EU and its member states also underline the importance of the adoption of the Treaty on Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, the BBNJ, and of strengthening the collaboration with regional bodies such as regional fisheries management organizations and also regional sea conventions. And to this end, we have also submitted some amendments to the Secretariat in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move to South Africa.
Thank you very much, Chair. South Africa acknowledges and supports the importance of cooperation and synergies with other bodies. We also note the synergies and linkages between Agenda Item 17, 18.1, and 18.2, which may make it necessary to merge the three agenda items into one consolidated agenda item in the spirit of synergies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. If we could move to Brazil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks the Secretariat for preparing the report on progress on implementation of Resolution 11.10 on synergies and partnerships and Decision 13.9 NGO participation in CMS processes. For Brazil, cooperation with other international instruments or organizations is extremely important for this convention. We also believe that these partnerships must always be institutionally and structurally appropriate to the achievements of the CMS mandates and goals. Indeed, we must keep in mind that conventions, treaties, and other international instruments have specific objectives, which are the main reason for their existence. Thus, they can be complementary to each other. They, however, can never overlap or mix since, it's worth reiterating, each one has its own goals and mandates. Cooperation, therefore, must not imply double efforts, including financial efforts, nor any reinterpretation of commitments previously undertaken under this convention or other international instrument. We must avoid language that might suggest this possibility. And for this reason, we still consider that the word synergy is not the most appropriate, since it may lead to results that do not meet our specific mandate under CMS. Brazil, therefore, would prefer to use the term complementarity instead of synergy. Moreover, Brazil is of the opinion that we must be careful not to create excessive burdens on the CMS Secretariat in the context of budgetary constraints. And I recall the presentation we had on this topic during the last meeting of the Standing Committee, and also discussions we had yesterday night at our the first meeting of the Working Group on Budget. In this regard, we have identified at least 15 requests or calls addressed to the Secretariat or to the Executive Secretary in the resolution proposed in this document. Brazil would like to know the opinion of other parties as to whether this would not be an excessive amount of work for the Secretariat on this issue, and whether such tasks should not be conditional on the availability of resources, as is the case in other documents. Still, on the proposed resolution, the exact meaning of the collaborations proposed in operative paragraph 9, in particular the expression that can help to extend the multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary scope of approach to collaboration, is not clear for us. It seems that we are asking the Secretariat to facilitate collaboration to help collaboration, something that sounds a bit strange. So we would appreciate clarification on this point. Finally, Brazil requests the exclusion of the expression "as far as possible" on operative paragraph 9. As we mentioned previously, each multilateral environmental agreement has its own mandates and goals. Hence, avoiding duplication of efforts must be the general rule to be applied always and not as far as possible. I'll send these comments by mail to the Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil, for that. It's very helpful. If you could send the comments in. If we could go to United Kingdom, please.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. The UK wishes to thank the Secretariat for its work on this important issue for the Convention. As the document outlines, there are many processes and partners that CMS needs to engage with to ensure that the aims and the objectives of the Convention are met. Rather than repeating what others have already said, I can confirm that we would support the proposed amendments referenced by Australia with regards to the involvement of IPLCs. And we would also like to make sure that there are some changes to the text of the resolution 1110 Rev COP14 to make reference to recognising the adoption of the UN BBNJ agreement, as we believe these to be important additions. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. If I could go to Israel next, please.
Thank you, Chair. We just want to support the document, but to address one specific issue which came up in the debate here, which was expressed mainly by Australia, talking about the issue of Indigenous peoples and local communities. And certainly there's plenty of IPLC knowledge and traditional knowledge that could assist the work of this convention in conservation of migratory species. However, one must be aware that there are certain traditional practices that could be harmful to migratory species, and this has come to light in the work of MIKT, the CMS task force looking at harm to migratory species in the Mediterranean, and it probably occurs in other parts of the world too. So we would just encourage within the text that was proposed by Australia, which we haven't seen, to add some sort of caveat that the Scientific Council should also look at cases of harm to migratory species within IPLC practices and not just consider their actions as only from the point of view of where it assists and where it helps in the conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel, for that. If we could then go to Switzerland, please.
Thank you, Chair. We also support the document 18.1 on synergies and partnerships, and we support the many good comments that have been made by others. Just one additional remark. We would like to see on page 12, where we make reference to the Bern process, to replace noting the Bern process with welcoming the Bern process. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. If we could go to the Philippines.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor for the second time. I wish to provide or highlight one concern on the World Coastal Forum. So consistent with the CMS Resolution 12.25 that is on promoting conservation of critical intertidal and other coastal habitats for migratory species, and in complementation to the preambular statement with reference to the Coastal Forum, we propose additional operative paragraph to engage the World Coastal Forum as a mechanism to facilitate the synergistic delivery of commitments in relation to coastal ecosystem conservation and restoration under the CMS, the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, CBD, and the Conmin-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And in addition, under 8Bs, the Philippines suggests to emphasize protection of migratory species habitats as a key role of subnational and local governments, in particularly the promotion of other effective area-based conservation measures. Additionally, the national governments of parties should strengthen the capacity of their subnational and local governments, being the government's field implementation arm. And lastly, on paragraph 26, the Philippines proposes to include cooperation not only with international organizations, but also to regional, sub-regional, and national organizations. So we will submit the text of the proposed amendments to the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Argentina, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Many of the comments that our delegation would like to make have already been made by other members here in the room. So without prejudice, Argentina would like to align itself with the comments made by the honourable delegation of Brazil, in particular that which is linked to the budgetary matters. And we will also send our comments via email. We would also like to highlight 2 or 3 points. In paragraph 2 of the considerings, our delegation would suggest that we remove that because it promotes the creation of a new platform between the two mechanisms, and there is not a mandate for that. This decision aims not to create new structures, but to bring the work of CMS and IPBES together in those areas linked to species under the umbrella of CMS. And in paragraph 3, we suggest that we remove the sentence on the link between science and policies and support for policy. And in Annex 2, directed to the secretaries. We would like to look at paragraph where they discuss the areas that both platforms can work together on. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. If you could send the text in again to Secretariat as soon as possible, that would be very helpful. Thank you for that. If I could go then to New Zealand, please. I think you may have asked for the floor earlier when we were in old style, waving placards, as it were. So, New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And New Zealand welcomes the active engagement of the CMS Secretariat in promoting CMS issues across the UN system in the last triennium, and the increased cooperation among the secretariats in the biodiversity-related agreements. Increased synergies is one of the key objectives of the draft strategic plan that we're considering this meeting. So we're pleased to see the concept right up front in that plan. It's a critical concept to the success of all our multilateral agreements, while obviously ensuring that we're not unnecessarily duplicating work, as others such as Brazil have suggested. On this matter, we'd like to thank the EU and UK for raising the new agreement on biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. Once in force, close cooperation and synergies between CMS and BBNJ have potential to benefit both organisations and should be encouraged. So we'd like to add a paragraph on that resolution, to this resolution, welcoming the adoption of the agreement and encouraging parties, the Secretariat, NGOs and other stakeholders to engage in its processes and build synergies to enhance conservation of migratory marine species. And by engaging in its processes, I'm meaning the preliminary phase, which is about to start, leading up to it coming into force, and then the phase, obviously, once it's in force. I think others have sent text to the Secretariat too, so happy to consider other formulations of that. Two other small comments on the resolution. Paragraph 3, we don't support the addition of the words subnational and local governments and request that they're deleted. For New Zealand, we don't classify these as stakeholders and don't think it's appropriate for the Secretariat to develop consultation mechanisms with these groups. We see cooperation with these groups as the role of parties. Para 8 bis, for the same reason as I've just mentioned, we request the striking out of the words "in the Secretariat." We don't believe this should be part of its role. And finally, I'd like to thank Australia for its proposal, which we wholeheartedly support. New Zealand has many examples of using Indigenous knowledge in the context of migratory species conservation, so we welcome more focus on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand, for that. Again, if you can send in any text amendments as soon as possible, that would be good. We have a signing ceremony to take place in a few minutes. I will take 3 more comments that I have interventions on this from CITES, BirdLife and the High Seas Alliance, and then we'll break for the signing ceremony if we're not completed. So CITES, please.
As it's the first time the CITES Secretariat is taking the floor, I would like to thank the government of Uzbekistan for its warm hospitality, the CMS Secretariat for the excellent organization of the meeting, and congratulate the Chair and Vice Chair of the Committee of the Whole on their election. The CITES Secretariat appreciates the comprehensive report on synergies and partnerships prepared by the Secretariat. The CMS and CITES conventions, together with other biodiversity-related conventions, have an essential role in the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and in effectively addressing the drivers of biodiversity loss. As also discussed under the previous agenda item, the ongoing cooperation among secretariats of the biodiversity-related conventions through the Biodiversity Liaison Group could support parties in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In this regard, the CITES Secretariat also notes the role of the Bern process to strengthen cooperation and collaboration among biodiversity-related conventions, contributing to effective and efficient implementation of the framework. The CITES Secretariat and members of the CITES Standing Committee participated in the Bern 3 conference that took place in Bern last month. Chair, the parties to CITES, expressing their appreciation of the cooperation between the Secretariats of CITES and CMS, and taking into consideration the Memorandum of Understanding between the Secretariats, adopted a resolution on the cooperation and synergy with the CMS that guides the collaboration between the Secretariats. As indicated in document 18.1, the CITES-CMS joint work program for the period 2021 to 2025, endorsed by the standing committees of the conventions, has guided collaboration and cooperation between the Secretariats. The CITES Secretariat looks forward to continue to collaborate with the CMS Secretariat on matters of common interest and within our respective mandates. Thank you.
Thank you, CITES. If I could go then to BirdLife, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have a minor proposal for an amendment to operative paragraph 15, which touches on the need to work with the CBD and other relevant MEAs to ensure we are working together in the best possible way to advance the conservation and sustainable use of species in the processes of the CBD. The current wording requests the CMS Secretariat as well as the Secretariats of the MEAs to advance this work in order to reflect that many parties and other stakeholders are equally interested in helping shape these synergies with the CBD. We suggest adding the following in the beginning of the paragraph so that it would read, further requests the Secretariat together with interested parties and stakeholders, and then carry on. We will submit this in writing and are hopeful that parties interested in advancing these synergies will consider supporting this addition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, BirdLife. If I could move to the final intervention for this period, the High Seas Alliance, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm delivering this statement on behalf of High Seas Alliance, BirdLife, Blue Resources Trust, Law of the Wild, I4, and WCS. As this is the first time that the High Seas Alliance is taking the floor, we would like to thank the CMS Secretariat for the excellent organization of this COP and the government of Uzbekistan for the warm hospitality extended. The slogan of this COP, Nature Knows No Boundaries, highlights the importance of conserving migratory species across their range. And of course, many migratory marine species spend part or even most of their lives in areas beyond national jurisdiction. The BBNJ agreement that was already mentioned to, adopted in June last year, will create for the first time a legal framework for the conservation of biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, including a process to develop area-based management tools, such as MPAs, and modern requirements for conducting environmental impact assessments for activities affecting marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. It currently has 86 signatories, and 1 country has already ratified it. It will require 60 ratifications to enter into force. We believe the BBNJ agreement, once in force, can play an important and synergistic role to achieving the objectives of CMS by extending the toolkit available to parties to conserve migratory species in areas beyond national jurisdiction. Conversely, we believe CMS can offer a wealth of guidance and technical information to the BBNJ processes based on its ongoing initiatives. Close collaboration between both instruments will help contribute to achieving joint objectives. As such, we strongly welcome and support adding references to the BBNJ agreement in Resolution 1110 on synergies and partnerships, as the European Union, United Kingdom, and New Zealand indicated were already submitted to the Secretariat. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm conscious that we do need to break now for the signing ceremony. We will open this item very briefly again after lunchtime to take any further comments. But for now, the key point is to get any changes to the text to Secretariat as soon as possible. So thank you all very much for your interventions and helpful suggestions through that item. I wonder if I could now invite Ms. Gretel Aguilar, IUCN Director General, and Ms. Amy Frankel, Executive Secretary, to the podium for the signing ceremony which will take place. Thank you. Yes, EU.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for this. It's just a logistical question. We wondered if on agenda item 15.2, so that's the one on the Scientific Council membership, if the Secretariat could facilitate a meeting amongst the regions, most notably on the COP-appointed councillors. So if there could be a room and a time slot for that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'll talk to the Secretariat about that, but that seems sensible. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Secretariat have an answer to the question. Secretariat?
Yes, thank you. If the contact group would like to meet, they can use the SIGA room now because there is no meeting of the Credentials Committee today. So they could meet during the lunchtime in the SIGA room.
Thank you, Secretariat. So in New Zealand, again, logistics, where we'll come back after the signing ceremony to outline logistics in terms of where we're going this afternoon. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Secretariat.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, very quickly. Cross-cutting working group is going to meet on the strategic plan at 1 in the Hangul room. And then right after we finish in plenary, delegates can proceed to the following rooms for meetings of their respective side events. Budget will meet in Falcon, terrestrial in Jeran, avian in Great Bastard, aquatic in Pelican. And also, I'm glad to inform that shuttles will be ready by the main gate for those delegates that are going to the Expo Center for the side events. And also, I would like to announce that the daily report of yesterday is already public and published in the 3 languages of the convention. And any comments, please do send them to the email account provided by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. We will now undertake the signing ceremony. If I could hand over to Amy Frankel, the Executive Secretary.
Good afternoon. IUCN and the Convention on Migratory Species have years of long-standing collaboration. IUCN is honored to work even more closely with the Convention parties to save African carnivores and their habitats across the African continent by signing a Memorandum of Understanding. The population decline of carnivore species in Africa has been a major concern for a range of states, and habitat degradation, fragmentation, poaching, and human-wildlife conflict pose major threats to this apex predator, which are critical for healthy ecosystems functioning. So when we are signing here this agreement, is an important milestone to catalyze fundraising and action to support range states, non-governmental organizations, indigenous peoples, organizations and local communities, and all critical actors to protect these flagship species and ecosystems they support. Platforms such as this one will integrate and maximize different stakeholders, conservation efforts, avoid duplication of activities, and mobilize increasing resources. So this partnership will be critical to achieving the scale and quality of conservation outcomes we need in order to achieve the commitments under CMS, CITES, and other multilateral agreements, and ultimately the goals of the global biodiversity framework. This initiative is a demonstration of IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, commitment to support governments and translate national and regional ambitions into concrete actions. So thank you for our fruitful collaboration, Amy. Thank you very much, and thank you for your valuable support.
I just want to add that it's a real pleasure today to sign this MOU with IUCN, with Gretel, and that indeed we've been hearing a lot in the room today about the need for financial support and long-term financial support for a lot of the commitments that are being made. This is a wonderful example of how we're taking that call and turning it into action so that we can really try together to leverage and raise funds that will help support governments in the priorities that they have set on the issues of the African carnivore initiatives, which do include 4 of some of the most iconic species that we know. So it's a great pleasure, and we look forward to strengthening and deepening our work with IUCN on this and on other matters.
Thank you very much, IUCN. It's very good that we're consolidating our working relationship with you, so thank you again for that. We should break for lunch now. Hopefully you know the rooms for the working groups. There are a number of side events scheduled, so I know they have a time limit on them as well. Thank you very much for your input this morning. We'll resume at 3 o'clock sharp this afternoon. Thank you. Can I also just add my thanks to the interpreters for their work this morning. Thank you.